Fen the silence before the storm. You've been taught to convince people through reason, to argue your case, to prove your point, to push harder when someone resists. And that's exactly why you keep losing. Every time you try to force someone to see your truth, you're handing them the very weapon they'll use to reject you. The moment you speak your desire out loud, you've already begun to lose control of it, because the deepest principle of human psychology is this: people don't want what you want them to want. They want what they've convinced themselves they discovered on their own. And until you understand this, you'll remain a prisoner of your own transparency, wondering why intelligent arguments fail, while fools who say nothing get everything. Machiavelli understood something that most never will. Power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg for recognition. Real influence operates in the shadows of conscious thought, planting seeds in soil the target believes is their own mind. This is reverse psychology taken to its final, most dangerous form. Not the childish trick of telling someone to do the opposite of what you want. No, this is the systematic manipulation of human reactance, ego, and the illusion of free will. These are the 13 laws that govern persuasion from the shadows. Learn them, and you'll never need to convince anyone of anything again. Ignore them, and you'll spend your life confused why people do the opposite of what's clearly in their best interest. The first law is the law of strategic withdrawal. When you want something from someone, the worst thing you can do is reach for it. Human beings are not rational creatures, weighing options on a scale. We are emotional animals obsessed with autonomy. The moment we feel someone wants something from us, our entire nervous system activates a defense protocol. Psychologists call it psychological reactance. The rest of us call it being difficult. But here's what they don't tell you in those psychology textbooks. Reactance isn't just resistance. It's a transfer of power. When you visibly want something, you've made yourself the beggar. You've elevated the other person to the throne of decision maker. And human nature is such that the person on the throne will always flex that power, even if it means denying themselves something beneficial, just to prove they can. So the law is simple. When you want something, withdraw. Create distance. Show indifference. Not fake indifference that reeks of manipulation, but the kind of cool removal that suggests you've already moved on to better options. Watch how quickly they lean in. Watch how the power dynamic inverts when you stop feeding the relationship with your attention. People don't value what pursues them. They value what eludes them. The second law is the law of forbidden fruit. Nothing makes something desirable quite like the suggestion that it's not for everyone, that it might not even be for them. You see this everywhere once you know to look for it. The exclusive clubs that aren't actually exclusive but make you feel lucky to get in. The products that are almost sold out forever. The relationships where one person stays mysteriously unavailable. This isn't accidental. It's psychological architecture. Human desire is fundamentally comparative. We don't want things because they're objectively valuable. We want them because they signal something about us in relation to others. So when you want someone to desire something, don't sell them on its benefits. Question whether they're ready for it. Imply it might be beyond them. Create a small wall of qualification, not so high they give up, but high enough that climbing it feels like an achievement. The moment someone thinks they have to prove themselves worthy of something, that thing has already won. They've internalized the hierarchy. They're now selling themselves to you, not the other way around. And they'll never realize the whole game was rigged from the start. The third law, and this is where it gets darker, is the law of manufactured rivalry. If you want someone to commit to you, to a project, to an idea, don't convince them it's good. Let them see someone else wanting it. Human beings don't assess value in isolation. We're tribal creatures who learned over millennia that if others want something, it probably has survival value. This is why auctions work, why love triangles destroy friendships, why startups talk about momentum and investor interest, instead of just explaining what the product does. When you present yourself or your idea alone, you force the other person to evaluate it objectively, which means slowly, skeptically, looking for flaws. But when you suggest that others are circling, evaluating, getting ready to commit, you activate a different part of the brain entirely. The part that doesn't think, the part that panics, the part that fears loss more than it desires gain. So, manufacture the rival. Let it slip that you're considering other options, that other people have expressed interest. That time is running out because the opportunity won't wait. You're not lying. You're simply making visible the competition that already exists in every decision, and watching as they suddenly discover urgent certainty about something they were ambivalent about 5 minutes ago. But there is a deeper, more dangerous truth we haven't touched yet. One that flips everything you think you know about human motivation on its head. The fourth law is the law of strategic incompetence. If you want someone to value you, occasionally fail at something they can succeed at. This sounds insane until you understand the economy of ego. Every relationship, professional or personal, operates on an unspoken ledger of superiority and inferiority. When you're competent at everything, when you solve every problem, when you need nothing, you become threatening. People don't feel comfortable around perfection. They feel judged. They feel small, so they push away. But when you're strategically incompetent, when you occasionally fumble something trivial that they can step in and fix, you've given them something priceless, the feeling of being needed, the pleasure of superiority in a domain that doesn't threaten you. Watch a master manipulator work a room. They'll ask someone to explain something they definitely already understand. They'll struggle with technology a child could master. They'll position others as experts in small, meaningless ways, and those people will love them for it. Because you made them feel valuable without giving up any real power. You paid them in ego, the cheapest currency that somehow remains the most precious. The fifth law is the law of the void. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's the most powerful communication there is. When you go quiet after someone expects you to speak, to explain, to justify yourself, you create a vacuum. And human beings cannot tolerate a vacuum. They will fill it with their own projections, their own anxieties, their own narratives. Most often, these narratives are far more flattering to you than anything you could have said. This is why the mysterious person in the group has power, why the leader who explains less commands more respect than the one who justifies every decision, why the person who doesn't respond immediately to every text somehow becomes more desirable. You're not playing hard to get. You're letting their imagination do the work you could never do with words, because whatever they imagine in that silence is shaped by their own desires and fears. They're convincing themselves, and conviction that comes from within is the only kind that actually lasts. So practice the void. Get comfortable with unexplained pauses. Let questions hang. Watch how people scramble to fill the space, revealing everything you need to know about what they really think and want. The sixth law is the law of controlled opposition. If you want to eliminate resistance to your idea, don't fight the opposition. Become it. Present the counterargument before they can. Name the objection they're thinking. Man the case against yourself. This is psychological judo. When you argue against your own position, you do something remarkable. You steal the satisfaction of resistance. You remove the pleasure of being the contrarian, the skeptic, the smart person who sees the flaw everyone else missed. And humans crave that pleasure. We love feeling like we're the one who thought critically while others were fooled. So, when you preemptively acknowledge flaws, when you seem more aware of the problems than the critic, you leave them nowhere to go. They can't attack a position you've already criticized. They can't feel superior to someone who's already demonstrated more rigorous thinking. What happens next is fascinating. Having been denied the satisfaction of opposition, they often flip. They start defending your position, finding reasons why those flaws aren't actually deal breakers. You've made them argue with themselves, and they'll arrive at your conclusion convinced it was their idea all along. The seventh law is the law of strategic vulnerability. Power doesn't come from never showing weakness. That's what amateurs think. Real power comes from controlling what weakness you show, and when you show it. A perfectly curated vulnerability does three things simultaneously. First, it humanizes you, dropping defenses in others because humans reciprocate vulnerability. Second, it demonstrates confidence because only the secure can afford to admit imperfection. Third, and most manipulative, it creates a bonding moment that the other person mistakes for intimacy. But notice the word strategic. This isn't therapy. You're not actually opening up. You're selecting a minor, relatable weakness that doesn't undermine your core value proposition. A successful entrepreneur admits they're terrible at work-life balance, not that they're bad at business. A dating prospect admits they're too picky about relationships, which implies they're selective, not desperate. The vulnerability is real enough to feel authentic, but calculated enough to reinforce the image you want to project. And the person receiving this confession, they feel special, chosen. They think they're seeing the real you. They have no idea they're seeing the performance of authenticity, which is far more effective than authenticity itself. The eighth law, and we're entering territory now where morality starts to blur, is the law of manufactured crisis. People don't make decisions based on what's best. They make decisions based on what's urgent. So if you want action, if you want commitment, if you want someone to stop deliberating and just do what you need them to do, create urgency, not fake urgency. Real consequences with real timelines. The job offer that expires. The investment opportunity that closes. The relationship that won't wait indefinitely for someone to figure out what they want. This isn't pressure. Pressure is external force. This is revelation. You're simply making visible the cost of inaction, which always existed, but was easy to ignore when tomorrow felt infinite. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn to be cruel, to be kind. What he meant was that prolonged ambiguity is often more painful than decisive action. When you force a crisis point, when you remove the comfort of infinite deliberation, you're actually doing someone a favor. You're cutting through the paralysis of too many options, and in that moment of forced choice, they'll choose. Often, if you've structured everything correctly, they'll choose you. Not because you manipulated them, but because you were the only one willing to respect both of you enough to demand a real decision. But wait, there's a law we haven't discussed yet that makes all the others look tame by comparison. One that deals with the darkest aspect of human nature. The ninth law is the law of projected transformation. People don't buy products. They don't buy ideas. They don't even buy results. They buy the version of themselves they believe those things will help them become. This is why diet books outsell nutrition advice. Why self-help gurus who promise complete transformation do better than therapists who promise incremental progress. Why revolutions sell better than reforms. You're not in the business of changing reality. You're in the business of changing identity. So when you want someone to commit to anything, stop talking about what it is. Start talking about who they'll become. Not in vague terms. Specific transformation. The before and after, but of the self. And here's the manipulation. You're not promising you'll change them. You're suggesting they're already that person, just trapped under circumstances or habits or fear. The transformation already happened. They just need to claim it. This bypasses resistance entirely because you're not asking them to become someone different. You're inviting them to become who they really are. It's irresistible. It's also completely unfalsifiable. If they succeed, your frame was correct. If they fail, they didn't fully commit to their true self. Either way, you've created a belief system that's immune to evidence. The 10th law is the law of strategic scarcity. Abundance makes things worthless. Scarcity makes them priceless. This isn't just about products. It's about you. When you're always available, always responsive, always ready to help, you train people to value you at zero, because value is measured not by quality, but by cost. And if something costs nothing, no time, no effort, no waiting, the brain assumes it's worthless. This is why people who respond instantly to every text are forgotten. Why professionals who are always free for a meeting never get the best clients. Why the friend who cancels their plans for you becomes the friend you take for granted. You have to cost something, and the cost isn't money. It's time, attention, effort to access you. When you make yourself scarce, When your time becomes a resource people have to plan around. You're not being difficult. You're operating according to the fundamental law of economics. Scarce resources are valuable resources. You're simply making sure people remember that you're a scarce resource, not an infinite one, and watching how the quality of your relationships and opportunities transforms when people have to earn your time instead of assuming it. The 11th law is the law of the common enemy. Nothing unites people faster than a shared target of contempt. Religions understood this thousands of years ago. Politicians have been using it since the first tribe, and you can use it in every relationship and negotiation you enter. When you want to bond with someone, when you want to create instant intimacy and trust, don't tell them what you love. Tell them what you both hate, the inefficiency that drives you both crazy, the person who wronged you both, the system that's rigged against people like you. The moment you establish common opposition, you've created an us versus them dynamic, and humans are tribal creatures. We define ourselves more by who we oppose than who we support. This is dark because it requires manufacturing or highlighting division, but it's effective because it bypasses weeks of trust building. You've created a micro tribe of two, bonded not by shared values, which are hard to discover, but by shared enemies, which are easy to agree on. And once that bond exists, once someone sees you as an ally in their struggle against the common enemy, they'll trust you with remarkable speed, because you're not just another person. You're a comrade. The 12th law is the law of the noble lie. Sometimes the truth is not your friend. Sometimes people don't want reality. They want a version of reality they can live with. And if you insist on complete honesty in a world that runs on necessary illusions, you'll be right and you'll be alone. This doesn't mean lie about facts. It means understand that humans operate on narratives, and narratives are selective. They emphasize certain truths and de-emphasize others to create coherent meaning. When someone asks if they can do something difficult, they're not asking for a probability assessment. They're asking if you believe in them. When someone shares a dream that seems unlikely, they're not requesting a feasibility study. They're requesting an ally. The noble lie is giving people the belief they need to attempt difficult things, knowing that belief itself increases the probability of success. It's telling the cancer patient they can beat this, not because you have data, but because the alternative guarantees defeat. It's telling yourself you're going to make it, when all evidence suggests otherwise, because humans don't operate on evidence. We operate on story. And the person who controls the story, who tells the lie that makes action possible, wields more power than the person who tells the truth that paralyzes. Machiavelli knew this. Every leader knows this. And the question isn't whether you'll use noble lies. It's whether you'll use them consciously or unconsciously. Whether you'll be the author or the believer. The 13th and final law is the law of the invisible hand. The most effective manipulation is the one the target never sees. Not because you've hidden it well, but because you've made the target believe every decision was theirs. Every choice was their idea. Every outcome was what they wanted all along. This is the apex. This is where reverse psychology transcends technique and becomes art. You don't push. You don't pull. You don't even guide. You structure the environment so that the paths you want someone to take are the ones that feel most natural. The choices you want them to make are the ones that seem most aligned with their own self-interest. You've become the architect of their reality, but they experience it as freedom. This requires patience. It requires understanding someone so deeply that you know what they want before they do. It requires planting seeds months before the harvest. But when it works, when someone arrives at your destination, convinced they chose the route themselves, you've achieved something remarkable. You've made yourself unnecessary to the process. You've created a self-running system where the person continues to behave exactly as you need them to, even when you're gone, because they believe it's their authentic choice. They'll defend those choices. They'll evangelize them. They'll never suspect that the invisible hand guiding them was yours all along. And here is where we arrive at the question that should have been bothering you this entire time. If all of this is true, if humans are this predictable, this susceptible to systematic manipulation, then who's manipulating you? What beliefs do you hold that were carefully planted? What choices have you made that you think were yours, but were actually the endpoint of someone else's invisible hand? What desires do you have that were manufactured by someone who understood these laws better than you? You've been learning how to use reverse psychology. But what if someone has been using it on you your whole life? What if the very fact that you want to learn these techniques, that you're watching this video right now, is itself the result of psychological manipulation? What if your desire for power over others is the very mechanism through which you've been controlled? Because here's the deepest truth. The person who thinks they're immune to manipulation is the easiest mark. The person convinced they're too smart, too aware, too skeptical to fall for psychological tricks is the one falling for the biggest trick of all: their own arrogance. You've been taught to convince people through reason, to argue your case, to prove your point, to push harder when someone resists. And that's exactly why you keep losing.